My name's Nathan, and I'm 34 years old. I've always been the one who kept my head down, did the responsible thing, paid my share, and more, while everyone else in my family seemed content to skate by on the bare minimum. I'm not rich, not by any stretch, but I've worked in IT since I was 22, saved aggressively, never married, no kids. That meant I became the reliable one, the go-to, the unspoken ATM, and I never complained, at least not out loud. For years, I helped cover my parents' utilities when my dad's pension fell short. I paid off my brother Josh's credit card debt when his wife accidentally maxed it out planning a baby shower. I even co-signed for their car loan, which they promptly forgot to make payments on, tanking my credit for a while. And still, I kept showing up. Birthdays, holidays, random Tuesday night dinners. Always with a bottle of some drink or a gift, trying to stay in the picture. Trying to believe I was part of a family. But that belief took its final blow at this year's family reunion. The invitation came in the mail, the kind with too much glitter glued to the envelope and a passive-aggressive, "We hope you can make it this year," in cursive at the bottom. Hosted at my parents' house, as always. Catered, they said. RSVP required, which I did, on time, politely, with a note saying I'd bring a gift basket. I even picked one out myself. Local honey, fancy cheeses, a few gourmet jams. Wrapped it up in cellophane with a blue satin bow. When I pulled into the driveway that afternoon, the house was buzzing with activity. Cars lined both sides of the street. Balloons tied to the mailbox. Kids running through sprinklers on the lawn. From the outside, it looked like the kind of family event you'd see in a movie. But inside, that was always a different story. I walked up the path with the basket in my hands, smiling. Ready, again, to try. To be polite. To belong. But the moment I stepped through the door, I felt it. That quiet shift in energy. The way people's eyes skimmed past me like I was just another decoration. My cousin Mark nodded vaguely before returning to his conversation. My Aunt Debbie gave me the kind of hug people reserve for coworkers they don't really like. And then, just behind the dessert table, I saw the seating chart. Big, handwritten names in gold ink on a giant whiteboard. Rows of round tables drawn in dry erase marker, each spot assigned. And my name, my full name, had a thick black line slashed through it. At first, I thought maybe it was a mistake. Maybe they changed tables and hadn't erased the old assignments. I looked closer. Nope. Underneath where my name used to be, in smaller letters, someone had written extra guest. Before I could even form a thought, I heard her. "Oh God, you actually came." It was my brother's wife, Amanda. She was wearing some flowing floral dress like she was auditioning for the Real Housewives of Suburbia. She was holding a mimosa in one hand, a fake smile on her face. But her tone? Pure venom. "Did you not get the hint last year?" she added with a laugh, already turning to someone else. "We figured you'd skip like usual." Before I could respond, I caught sight of my mom across the room. I raised a hand in half a wave and she started walking over. For a second, I thought maybe, just maybe, she'd say something kind. Welcome me. Make it okay. Instead, she rolled her eyes. "Please," she muttered as she passed me, not even stopping. "Just don't embarrass us this time, all right?" Last year's toast was awkward enough. Toast? I hadn't even given one. I'd said one sentence of appreciation for Grandma. That was it. That was embarrassing. My hand tightened around the gift basket. My throat felt dry. And in that moment, something shifted. There was no outburst. No dramatic scene. Just a slow realization crawling up my spine like ice. I didn't matter to them. I was a seat filler. A wallet. A name on a list that only mattered when they needed something. I didn't speak. I didn't argue. I simply walked over to the kitchen counter, set the basket down gently, adjusted the bow, and walked out the front door without looking back. I don't think they even noticed at first. Or if they did, they didn't care. I drove off in silence. Windows down. Not angry, numb. Like something had broken inside me, quietly, and the air rushing past my face was all that was keeping me steady. For the first time in my life, I didn't go back. I didn't check in the next day. I didn't reply to my mother's group text photo dump captioned, "Family," heart emoji. So blessed. I just stopped. And within a week, the consequences started. It began when my dad's electricity was shut off. Apparently, the autopay I'd been covering for the last year was no longer working. Then came the frantic call from Josh. His card had been declined at a restaurant. He swore it must be a glitch, until he realized the joint account I'd been quietly funding for emergencies had been closed. But the real panic started when the checks bounced. See, my mom had this monthly check she sent to her church and to the garden club. Checks she always bragged about donating from the heart. Except they were never from her heart. They were from mine. I'd been transferring money into her account like clockwork on the first of every month for years. This month? Nothing. And that's when the voicemail started. It began with my dad's stiff tone. Nathan, something's wrong with the power bill. Call me back. Then Josh, bro, what happened with the card? Amanda's furious. Then my mom, please call us. We need to talk. You're overreacting. Overreacting. It was always the same. I was always overreacting when I didn't let myself be stepped on, when I dared to ask for even basic respect. By the end of the week, I had 15 voicemails and nearly 30 text messages. Some pleading, some angry. One from Amanda saying, I don't know what game you're playing, but you're punishing your family. Family. That word didn't mean what it used to. I didn't reply. I didn't block them either. I wanted them to sit in it, to feel what I had felt at that reunion, staring at my scratched-out name while people sipped champagne and laughed like I was the joke. The voicemails kept piling up. By the end of the second week, my inbox was a museum of guilt trips, half apologies, and veiled threats. My father left a particularly long one where he tried to sound composed but let the bitterness seep in around the edges. Nathan, we're just trying to understand why you're doing this. We raised you better than this. You're punishing your entire family over what? A seating chart. A seating chart. That's how small they thought the wound was. That's how casually they dismissed what they'd done. Not just at the reunion, but for years. And the more they minimized it, the more I realized they would never understand. Because to them, my worth had always been transactional. I didn't respond. Not to that voicemail, or the one from Amanda 2 days later where she actually had the audacity to say, look, I'm sorry if you felt excluded, but you really need to grow up and stop acting like everything's about you. Then she added, in the most saccharine voice imaginable, we're all struggling. You think you're the only one with problems. Struggling. That word stuck with me for days. Because I had struggled. Quietly. I'd eaten instant noodles some weeks in my 20s to keep my brother's car from being repossessed. I'd skipped vacations, birthday gifts for myself, and even a long overdue dentist appointment just to make sure my parents' heating didn't get shut off during the winter. And every time I thought maybe this time they'd say thank you, or maybe just treat me like more than a line item in their budget. I was wrong. But I didn't just cut off the money and leave it at that. I got methodical. Every subscription, every account, every little thing I'd signed up for over the years, I combed through them all. I'd forgotten how many streaming services were under my name. My mom's precious HBO subscription disappeared one Tuesday night. The one she used to watch her murder mystery shows. 2 days later, Josh texted me, bro, did you change the Netflix password? Followed by Amanda's losing her mind. I didn't answer. Then there were the memberships. My dad's golf club dues. Canceled. The shared phone plan. Transferred everything to my personal account and left theirs unlinked. They'd have to sort that out on their own now. And the utilities? That was the most dramatic. I'd been paying their electric, gas, and internet directly through auto debit. I stopped all three, but I waited until I knew the bills would come due. Just long enough for the grace period to lapse. Just long enough to ensure that when the power flickered off one Thursday night, they'd be confused before they were angry. That's when the calls changed tone. My mother finally snapped. She called 3 times in 1 hour. The third message was sharp and cold. I don't know what kind of revenge you think you're getting, Nathan, but this is cruel. We are your family, and families don't abandon each other when things get hard. That line, families don't abandon each other. I sat in silence for a long time after that one. Not because I was unsure of what to do next, but because I was sure. For once, crystal clear. They had abandoned me in every way that mattered. Not physically, no, but emotionally, spiritually, intentionally. At every holiday where I sat alone at the edge of the table. At every birthday where my card arrived late or not at all. At every family photo where I was cropped out or told to step aside. They left me long ago. I was just finally leaving back. But they didn't just stop at guilt. They escalated. Amanda called me directly a few days later. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. What is wrong with you? She snapped. Your parents are in their 60s, Nathan. You can't just cut them off like this. They're humiliated. Your mom had to ask me for money to cover groceries. Good, I said flatly. She blinked. I could hear it in her silence. I never spoke like that before. You think you're teaching us a lesson? She said, her voice rising. You're just proving what we always knew. You're selfish. Cold. That's why you're alone. That one stung. I won't lie. But instead of yelling, I just said, maybe I'm alone because I was never really with people who loved me. Then I hung up. I started sleeping better after that. It was like the silence was finally mine. No more waiting for calls. No more anxious dread every time my phone lit up. I muted their numbers. Not blocked. I wasn't being cruel. I just didn't want to hear their noise anymore. It would have ended there, probably. I would have faded out of their lives quietly, let them scramble without me. But then I found out about the secret account. Turns out, Josh had added me as a silent cosigner on a small business loan 2 years ago without ever telling me. Something about, you said you'd support me if I got serious. Well, he had used my information, again, and this time, it was spiraling. The business had failed. Amanda's bakery idea had tanked after 6 months. And guess whose credit was being eaten alive by unpaid installments? Mine. I stared at the screen for a long time after seeing the notice. It was buried in an email from the bank, some nondescript subject line about account status. Inside was a sentence that hit me like a punch. You were listed as a cosigner on this delinquent business loan. Your credit score has been negatively impacted. I didn't even know what loan they were talking about. My heart started racing as I opened my financial tracking app, then dug into the details. A $25,000 loan issued to a business LLC under the name Sugar Bell Bites. Amanda's Bakery. I felt sick. I remembered that conversation, vaguely. It was during a Thanksgiving dinner 2 years ago. Amanda had brought homemade macarons, dry, overly sweet things that crumbled before they hit your teeth. She said she wanted to start a bakery, and Josh leaned over and whispered to me later, if you ever wanted to be part of something bigger than yourself, now's the time. I had laughed it off. I hadn't signed anything, or so I thought. Turns out, Josh had used an old digital authorization form I'd signed for a joint account years earlier, back when we were in our 20s and he had big plans. Somehow, he repurposed that signature. Maybe he forged something else. Either way, the bank saw me as liable. They had defaulted 6 months ago. 6 months, and they said nothing. I should have been furious. But at that moment, I wasn't. I was cold, calm, like someone had flipped a switch. I sat there, staring at the screen, and whispered out loud, okay, you want to play dirty? I got to work. I pulled every email, every old record, every screenshot I had from text messages where Josh talked about the business and how it was his and Amanda's baby. I dug up bank statements that proved I had stopped interacting with that account years ago. Then I contacted the bank and started the process to dispute the cosigner listing. It would take weeks, but I was determined. But that wasn't all. I wasn't going to just defend myself. I was going to make them feel it. Because at this point, I realized they weren't just entitled. They were reckless. And their recklessness was bleeding into my life. I reached out to a lawyer. I'd never hired one before, but I found someone who specialized in financial fraud. After explaining everything and sharing my documentation, he paused and said, you have a case. A case. That changed everything. I gave him permission to proceed. Meanwhile, I took a more personal approach. I started with Amanda's Bakery page. It was still up on Facebook and Instagram, full of fake positivity and discount cupcake promos. I noticed the comments had started drying up around the same time the loan went belly up. I left a polite but public comment under one of her last posts. Curious if you ever refunded the customers who never got their orders when the bakery shut down? It got 5 likes and 2 replies within an hour, both from people saying they had placed orders and never received anything. One even asked for my lawyer's info. Josh called me at midnight that night. I didn't answer. Next, I reached out to the family group chat. I hadn't said a word in there since before the reunion. I'd been a ghost. But now? I typed out one single message. Just a heads up, Josh and Amanda fraudulently listed me as a cosigner on a failed $25,000 loan without my consent. I've retained legal counsel. If anyone else has shared accounts or loans with them, you might want to check. Silence. Then, 2 people left the group chat. My cousin Mark messaged me privately. Wait, seriously? What is wrong with them? I didn't reply. I didn't have to. A week later, my lawyer filed the initial complaint. Josh and Amanda were served at their apartment. I didn't witness it, but I heard from a neighbor of theirs who worked with me years ago. Apparently, Amanda screamed at the poor process server and Josh tried to say, this is a misunderstanding. We're family. Family. That word again. I thought that might be the breaking point. But no. My mom finally called me the next morning. She sounded tired. Her voice, usually clipped and dismissive, had softened in that way people try when they realize the floor beneath them is collapsing. "Nathan," she said, we didn't know about the loan. Your brother didn't tell us." "Doesn't change anything," I said, keeping my voice flat. "I understand you're hurt, but this is all going too far. Do you really need to drag this into court?" "Yes," I said simply. There was a long pause. "We're family," she said finally. "You used to help us. You used to care." "I did care," I said. "I still do. But caring doesn't mean letting people burn me over and over again." She didn't respond. The call ended shortly after. Later that day, I got an email from Josh. Long rambling. It started with, "Look, man, I messed up," and ended with, "Please don't ruin my life over one mistake." But it wasn't one mistake. It was a lifetime of them. And I wasn't interested in being the cleanup crew anymore. I haven't gone back to another family event since. They still hold them. My cousin posts pictures sometimes. Smaller gatherings now. No balloons. No catered spreads. And definitely no seating charts. The last I heard, Josh had to take out a high-interest personal loan to cover the payments after the bank removed my name. Amanda went dark on social media. And my parents? They've downsized. Sold their house. Quietly. No announcement. Just a moving truck and a change of address card that showed up in my mailbox. I didn't send anything in return. Because I was done. Months passed. The silence that followed the legal fallout was almost surreal. For the first time in my adult life, my phone wasn't buzzing with requests for money, guilt-laced reminders of what family does for each other, or complaints about how hard things were for everyone but me. No more group texts. No more voicemails. No more fake birthdays where I was only invited because someone needed help paying the caterer. I didn't just remove myself from the chaos. I deleted the entire pattern of behavior from my life. The lawsuit against Josh and Amanda wasn't about the money. It wasn't even about the credit damage, though that took a while to clean up. It was about something deeper. Something I never really had words for until I sat in my lawyer's office, going over the evidence. I realized I wanted acknowledgement. Not an apology. Those came too cheap from people like them. But something real. Something binding. Something public. And that's exactly what I got. Josh eventually folded. His lawyer reached out a few weeks before the scheduled court date, offering a full settlement. Josh would pay back the loan in full, clear my name with the bank, and sign a notarized affidavit stating that I had no involvement with the bakery and that my identity had been used without consent. I agreed, on one condition. The agreement had to be filed with the court and made part of the public record. I wanted it in writing where it couldn't be hidden or rewritten later. They balked at first, but I didn't budge. Eventually, they caved. I got everything I wanted, and more importantly, the paperwork to prove it. I mailed a copy of the notarized affidavit to my parents. I didn't include a letter, just the signed, stamped pages with Josh's scrawled signature at the bottom. No reply ever came. I didn't expect one, but I did hear from someone else. My Aunt Melissa, one of the few relatives who'd always treated me like a human being, called a few days later. She hadn't been at the reunion, but she'd heard things. She said she didn't know the full story until she saw the court documents online. "You know," she said, "I always wondered why you looked so tired at those family dinners. Like you were waiting for someone to let you off the hook." I didn't know how to respond, so I said the only thing I could. "I guess I finally let myself off." She laughed. "Good. About time someone did." Melissa started inviting me to small get-togethers, nothing big, just dinner or coffee with her kids and husband. No forced smiles, no performance. It was strange at first. I kept waiting for a shoe to drop, but it never did. It was during one of those dinners, probably the 5th or 6th, that I realized something simple but life-altering. I was allowed to choose my peace. Not earn it. Not trade for it. Not beg for scraps of it in the margins of someone else's comfort. Just choose it. So that's what I did. I changed my phone number. I took a short vacation for the first time in years. I didn't go anywhere fancy, just rented a cabin near the mountains, read a few books, walked without a destination, slept in, ate whatever I wanted. And when I came back, I signed up for a pottery class. I didn't tell anyone. I just went. And slowly, piece by piece, I built a new life. One that wasn't shaped by obligation or shame. Every now and then, I'd hear whispers about what was going on back in the old family circle. Amanda tried to start another business, some online baking class series. It never took off. Josh took a job at a car dealership. Apparently, he's struggling with commissions. Their house, bought on a budget they couldn't maintain, is now up for sale. My parents? I heard they moved into a small condo in a quieter part of town. Word is they started attending a new church, probably hoping for a fresh start, or at least knew people who didn't know their story. I never went to visit. Not once. And I never felt guilty about it. Because the truth is, I gave them so many chances. More than I should have. I showed up. I paid. I endured. And all I ever asked for in return was basic respect. A seat at the table. A name not scratched out. A voice that wasn't laughed at. They couldn't give me that. So I stopped asking. One day, maybe they'll realize that losing me wasn't about money. It wasn't about power. It was about how many times you can push someone away before they learn to stay gone. But that's not my concern anymore. A year after the reunion, I threw a small dinner at my apartment. Just 6 people, Aunt Melissa and her husband, 2 of my friends from work, and a neighbor I'd gotten close to. I cooked. Nothing fancy, just pasta, some roasted vegetables, a few drinks. No seating chart. No hierarchy. Just people who wanted to be there. We laughed. We told stories. Nobody asked for anything. Nobody kept score. At one point, my neighbor raised a glass and said, "To chosen family." And for the first time in as long as I could remember, I lifted my glass without hesitation. To peace, I said. To my own beginning. And that was the end of theirs.